Okay, let's discuss the plague of the Tzfardea, the frogs. What happened? A giant frog came out of the Nile River. Giant. The Egyptians knew that there was going to be a plague of frogs because Moses already told them. And they started getting upset. So they grabbed their sticks and started banging and whacking this frog. And every time they whacked the frog, more frogs came out. And the madder they got, the more frogs that came about. And the angrier they got, the more they started hitting the frogs, and the more frogs came. And soon there were frogs all over the entire Egypt. Now I want you to try to picture and visualize how this was. Can you imagine waking up in the morning and having a bunch of, let's just call them interesting looking spiders or bugs on your bed? Probably pretty icky, pretty gross. I know my wife and my daughters, if they see an ant or a spider, they get all shaken up. They run away. They get scared. So here it wasn't just little bugs. It was frogs that jump and are slimy, and there's no way to control them. They're like flying all over the place, and it was everywhere. There were dozens and dozens, hundreds of them all over the place. You couldn't get rid of them. So if you were to go into your bathroom, you'd go into your kitchen, there was no relief. You had to live with the frogs. So when you're going to sleep at night, there's frogs in your bed. When you're waking up in the morning, you're waking up the frogs. When you're eating lunch, there's frogs. When you're eating dinner, there's frogs. Everywhere you go, there's frogs. And Hashem was sort of right away disrupting the entire life of the Egyptians. Disrupting their typical in-house life was being destroyed. Their typical functioning was being completely destroyed. And that's why that was this plague. That's what this plague was all about. Just destroying the inner functioning life of the Egyptians. The frogs, they say, even went into the ovens, into the food, and died for the sake of Hashem, to go ahead and to torture the Egyptians. Now, guess what was going on across the street? By the Jews, there wasn't one frog. Everything was clean, sanitary, pleasant. So it was a very clear message that the Jews, Baruch Hashem, were being protected by Hashem, and the Egyptians were being plagued by frogs. Now, it's hard when you see a distinction between Jews and non-Jews, it's hard to say that it's a natural cause. Because if there's a natural plague of frogs coming, then it should cross over the street into the Jewish neighborhood, like the coronavirus, for instance. So it was very, very clear to everybody, should have been clear to everybody, these were people that wanted to see that it was God. Let's get to the next plague, the plague of Kenan. Plague of Kenan is lice. Ever picture this? Picture, you ever see an anthill where there's like thousands upon thousands and thousands of ants? Or there's a little piece of food that was left on the floor on the ground and it's covered with just ants all over it?
Rabbi, each year whenever I open up my pool, we have like bins with all the pool supplies, and there's always like millions of ants in it.
Millions of ants. There you go. So imagine those millions of ants. They're not ants, they're lice. And they're on your body, covering your entire body. So it's not just that they're in the backyard by the pool. They're actually on your body, and you can't get rid of them. They're in your hair, they're in your feet, they're all over your body, lice. So here God is punishing the human body of the Egyptians, right? He disrupted their water supply with blood. He disrupted their normalcy of life with frogs. Now he's disrupting their own bodies. Their own bodies are being affected terribly by the plague of lice. And the Jews across the street are having a good time. No problem. The next plague is the wild animals, the Arov. So what happened with the wild animals? There were a couple amazing miracles by the wild animals, and we'll end after this. Number one is that the animals from all over the world came to Egypt. Animals that would never exist or survive in the habitat of Egypt came with their own habitat, their own climate, to come and destroy the Egyptians. So you had polar bears coming from the north, and you had all sorts of animals coming from different places, all coming to destroy the Egyptians. So what did this do? This caused complete chaos in the Egyptian infrastructure. All their streets were being patrolled by wild animals. Forget policemen. Forget the National Guard. The animals were patrolling the streets. You went outside, you had the fear of getting eaten alive by an animal. Tiger, a lion, a bear, a snake, a crocodile, all of the above. But more than that, the animals actually worked together to destroy the Egyptians. So you could have a snake slither underneath a guy's front door, open up the door, allowing the elephant to come in and whack a guy in the head, or the hyenas to come in and have lunch. So the animals, besides for coming with their habitat and climate, which is unbelievable, they as well were working hand in hand with each other to destroy the Egyptians. And what do you think the Jews were doing? The Jews were taking a Cholamoid trip, going to the zoo. They saw the most beautiful creations of Hashem across the street, and they were Baruch Hashem safe. Now, if you have a tremendous influx of wild animals coming into your city, and they only go to a certain boundary, it's again very, very clear messages coming from God. So just to review, by blood, God destroyed their water supply. By Tzvardeya, he destroyed their internal life, their life inside their home, their domestic life. Completely crazy inside their home. Lice destroying their bodies. Arov destroying their infrastructure, their streets, their towns, being patrolled by animals, having that tremendous fear. Instead of the IRS knocking or the FBI knocking on someone's door, there was the lions, the tigers, and the bears. That was the plague of Arov. Amazing the ways of Hashem.